Maybe they weren't transporting a living person, but a dead one. Or a dying one. That thought was the final straw. I couldn't do it. I couldn't be the man who delivers a coffin. I've been a long-haul trucker for 20 years, and you learn a few things in that time. You learn which dispatchers are liars, which truck stops have the cleanest showers, and which loads you shouldn't ask questions about. This was one of those loads. It was an off-the-books job, brokered by a guy I knew who knew a guy. A sealed, refrigerated trailer, picked up from a shuttered warehouse in the middle of the Arizona desert. Destination, a nondescript dock in northern Montana. The pay was all cash, more than I'd make in 3 months of legitimate runs. The only 2 rules were, don't be late, and don't, under any circumstances, break the seal on the trailer. The first day was fine. Just me, the hum of the engine, and the endless miles of sun-bleached asphalt. The reefer unit was set to a specific, slightly above freezing temperature, and I was told to keep it there no matter what. I figured it was black market pharmaceuticals, or maybe some exotic, illegally harvested animal. I didn't care. Cash was cash. The trouble started on the second night, somewhere in the empty plains of Wyoming. I had pulled over at a desolate rest stop to catch a few hours of sleep. The silence out there is immense, almost a physical presence. That's why I heard it. A soft thump. It came from the trailer. I sat up in the cab, listening. It could have been the load settling. I told myself that's what it was and tried to go back to sleep. Then I heard it again. Thump. 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 It was rhythmic. It sounded less like shifting cargo and more like a weak, insistent knocking. My blood ran cold. My mind raced through the possibilities, each one worse than the last. I got out of the cab, my flashlight beam cutting through the inky blackness. I walked to the back of the trailer and pressed my ear against the cold metal doors. For a long minute, there was nothing but the low drone of the reefer unit. Then, I felt it more than heard it. A faint, rhythmic vibration against my cheek. Thump. 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 I backed away, my heart hammering against my ribs. The rules were clear. Don't break the seal. Getting involved was not part of the deal. I scrambled back into my cab, started the engine, and pulled back onto the highway, driving faster than I should have. I turned the radio up, trying to drown out the noise, but I couldn't. Every bump in the road, every shift of the gears, I imagined the sound from the back. The knocking stopped, but the silence was somehow worse. By the time I was crossing into Montana, I was a wreck. I hadn't slept. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard the knocking. I kept glancing at the temperature gauge for the reefer. It had to be a person back there. But why the refrigeration? The horrifying answer bubbled up in my mind. To slow decomposition. Maybe they weren't transporting a living person, but a dead one. Or a dying one. That thought was the final straw. I couldn't do it. I couldn't be the man who delivers a coffin. About 50 miles from the drop-off, I pulled over onto a deserted logging road, surrounded by a thick forest. My hands were shaking as I grabbed a crowbar from my toolbox. The metal seal was thick, but I put my whole body into it, and with a loud crack, it snapped. I took a deep breath, the smell of pine and damp earth filling my lungs, and pulled the heavy door open. The reefer unit's cold air washed over me. The trailer was empty, except for a single, large wooden crate in the center, bolted to the floor. There were no markings on it, and from a small crack in the wood, a dark, thick liquid was slowly seeping out, freezing into a black icicle on the trailer floor. As I stared, I heard one last sound from inside the crate. It wasn't a thump. It was a soft, wet, tearing sound. And then, silence. I didn't wait to see what came out. I dropped the crowbar, left the truck idling on that lonely road with its door wide open, and ran into the woods. I never looked back. If this story creeped you out, please take a moment to subscribe the channel. Your support matters a lot. My rig was my home, and the CB radio was my neighborhood. It's how we truckers look out for each other, sharing tips about speed traps, accidents, or just breaking up the monotony of the road. I was heading west through the mountains of Idaho, a winding 2-lane highway at 3 in the morning. Fog was rolling in thick, clinging to the towering pines on either side of the road. It was slow going, and I was getting tired. That's when a voice crackled over the CB. Friendly, classic trucker drawl. "Hey there, westbound. You see that pile up ahead?" I hadn't seen anything. "Yeah," he continued. "Truck jackknifed a few miles up, blocking both lanes. Been sitting here for an hour. You can take exit 42. There's a service road that'll loop you right around it. Saves you a long wait." I thanked him, grateful for the heads up. Waiting for hours on a mountain pass was the last thing I wanted. I took exit 42 as instructed. The road immediately turned to gravel, narrower than I liked, and started winding deeper into the woods, away from the highway. My GPS showed nothing but a blank green space. After about 10 minutes, I started to get a bad feeling. The road was getting rougher, and I hadn't seen any signs of it looping back. I keyed the mic. "Hey, good buddy, you still there? Just wanted to check how far this service road goes." The same voice answered, but the friendly drawl was gone. It was flat and cold. Not much further. A shiver went down my spine. "What do you mean?" I asked. A new voice, younger and crueler, cut in. "He means you're almost there." Then another. "She's in a blue Kenworth. Looks clean." My heart stopped. They were watching me. This wasn't a shortcut, it was a trap. I grabbed my phone, but there was no service. I was completely isolated. I slammed on the brakes, planning to make a hard 3-point turn. But as my headlights swept across the road, they illuminated another semi, parked sideways, completely blocking the path ahead. It was an old, rust bucket Peterbilt, its engine off, sitting there like a steel wall. I threw my truck into reverse, my tires spinning on the loose gravel. As I looked in my side mirror, a pair of headlights flared to life behind me. Another truck, a big Freightliner, had pulled up silently, sealing my escape. I was boxed in. The voices on the CB started laughing. "Nowhere to go, little lady." "Did you really think that would work?" "Doors locked?" one of them mocked. "That's cute." Panic set in, cold and sharp. They were toying with me. I scanned the darkness outside my cab, seeing nothing but the impenetrable wall of trees. Then I saw it, a small break in the foliage to my right, what looked like an old, overgrown logging path, barely wider than my truck. It was a stupid, desperate chance. I could get stuck, roll the rig, or worse. But sitting here was not an option. I cranked the wheel hard, flooring the accelerator. My truck roared as it lurched off the gravel road, crashing through the underbrush. Branches screeched like claws against the metal sides of my cab. For a terrifying moment, the truck tilted, and I thought it was going to roll. But the tires found purchase on the soft earth. I didn't slow down. I just kept my foot pressed to the floor, plowing a path through the dark forest, the voices on the CB screaming with rage behind me. I drove like that for what felt like an eternity until I burst out onto another paved road. I didn't stop driving until I hit the outskirts of the next major city, my truck battered and covered in deep scratches. I never used a CB radio again. The loneliness of the road can mess with your head. You spend so much time alone with your thoughts that you start to feel disconnected from the world. My only real lifeline was my wife, Chloe. We'd talk on the phone for hours every night. It was our ritual. I was parked at a sprawling, chaotic truck stop in Nebraska for my mandatory 10-hour break. I was in my cab, talking to Chloe, telling her about my day. The bad traffic outside Omaha, the weird noise the engine was making. It was a normal, boring conversation, the kind that keeps you sane. As we were talking, a flat-nosed cab-over pulled into the spot right next to mine. The driver, a skinny guy with greasy hair and a strange, twitchy smile, got out and gave me a nod. I nodded back and turned my attention back to my call. "So," Chloe was saying, "don't forget to pick up that medicine for your aunt when you pass through Salt Lake City, the pharmacy on 4th South." "I won't forget," I promised. We said our goodbyes and I hung up. I was about to close my curtains when there was a knock on my window. It was the driver from the cab over. I cracked the window open. "Evening," he said, his smile widening. "Hate to bother you, but you got a spare fuse? My radio just went out." "Sure, let me check," I said, turning to rummage through my toolbox. "Big storm out by Omaha today, wasn't it?" he commented casually. I froze. "Heard the traffic was a real bear." I turned back to him slowly. "Yeah, it was," I said, trying to keep my voice even. Maybe he'd been on the same road, heard it on the radio. It had to be a coincidence. He chuckled. "An engine making a funny noise can really get in your head, can't it? Makes a man worry." My blood turned to ice. There was no way he could have known that. I hadn't said it on the CB. The only person I'd told was Chloe. I stared at him, my mind refusing to process what was happening. "Here's your fuse," I said, shoving it into his hand, my own hand trembling. "Much obliged," he said. But he didn't leave. He just stood there, that awful, twitchy smile plastered on his face. "You tell Chloe I said hi." I slammed the window shut and locked the door, my heart pounding in my throat. I watched as he walked back to his cab. He wasn't even looking at his radio. He just sat in his driver's seat staring straight at me. I grabbed my phone to call Chloe back, to warn her. But before I could dial, my phone rang. It was her. "Hey, honey," I answered, my voice shaking. "Listen, something really weird is happening." "I can't talk long," she interrupted. Her voice sounded strange, distant. "Marcus just called. His engine's making a weird noise. He's worried. I'll call you back later." And she hung up. I stared at my phone, utterly baffled. Chloe had just called me. To tell me that I had just called her. It made no sense. I looked over at the man in the other truck. He was holding his own phone up to his ear, and through the glass, I could see he was still smiling that dead, knowing smile. He saw me looking, gave a little wave, and then started his engine. He pulled out of the parking spot and drove away, disappearing into the sea of trucks. I sat there for an hour, paralyzed, my phone in my hand. I was afraid to call my wife back. I wasn't sure who or what would answer. If you enjoyed these stories, please take a moment to subscribe to the channel. More nightmares are on the way.